Good morning, guys. First, before we begin this week, just want to say that an overwhelming majority of you in environmental science do your work from last week, and I appreciate that. And some of you have brought packets up, so I think almost every junior in environmental science have did most of their work. Most of us have. Just keep that up. Keep staying busy. Keep your brain working. This week, we're going to talk more about integrated pest management and genetically modified organisms, and then I have a little small thing for you that you guys need to complete on genetically modified organisms after this video. This video won't take long today at all, 5 to 10 minutes at the most. We talked about integrated pest management. You think about what we talked about. We talked last week about pesticides and pesticide use. Well, this week, one thing that our farmers do throughout the country is they integrate the pest. They put the pest into those crops to make sure that we can keep that crop yield up and make sure we don't lose money. So integrated pest management, using a variety of techniques designed to minimize pesticide inputs. So one thing that they can do, we can use certain things to help us with the crops, but one thing that can help with integrated pest management with IPM, as you may see it, would be crop rotation. One year plant corn, the next year we plant cotton, the next year we plant soybeans, then bring it back around, corn, cotton, soybeans, and then they keep it on that structure of how they're planting things. That way those pests aren't just overran, okay, and there's not becoming an abundance of them, because not the same pests affect the same crops every year. Another thing would be intercropping, planting multiple things, all right, planting multiple, plant corn, one row, and then the next row of soybeans, corn, soybeans, or you have multiple things, you may have 4, kind of like maybe what your garden is. So therefore you don't have, again, like we said, that big rush and the big reproduction of one certain pest that's going to affect those crops. Planting pest-resistant crop varieties, so you can plant some certain crops that are resistant to certain pests, creating habitats for predators, and limited use of those pesticides. IPM says each crop and its pest are evaluated and a control program is developed that includes 3 methods of pest removal. So we can remove them physically. All right, so we physically go in and make sure that we get that done, or biologically, meaning the different types of plants that we're going to plant, and us making sure that in a lab somewhere, when these seeds are created at Monsanto or somewhere like that, that these seeds are made in a sense as to where the pests aren't going to mess with that plant, maybe because of some type of mechanism that plant might be able to put off at that point, an aroma of some kind that the animal may not like. And then chemical, you see there. Chemical is going to be where we spray the plants, where we put certain types of chemicals on these plants to help with the pest management. Since the goal is not to eliminate pest populations completely, but to reduce them to an economically acceptable level. Because it's all about making money. All right, every bit of it is for these farmers. Right now you see farmers in this world, the time that we're going through, I know you've seen on the news, you've got farmers that are really being hurt right now by just yield, all right, and people not buying their crops. And say strawberries right now are having to be picked, and you've got some massive strawberry farms where grocery stores are not buying the amount of strawberries that they bought in the past, and they're having to throw these things away. So they're losing money on that. Here you have times where we go through drought, or we have large amounts of rain where they lose money in those ways. With pesticides, there may be certain years where pests are worse than other years. Typically, after a rainy season, the pests are going to be worse. So we see that it all comes down to money with the integrated pest management. You see here, you've got a graph here, number of pesticides and their applications versus the yield and pesticide use in the harvest. So before integrated pest management training, after integrated pest management training, you see that we have low to high. So number of pesticide applications before, we had to put a whole bunch on there. All right, so you're having to put a ton of chemicals on these plants, which in return, we end up eating these plants. If we don't clean them properly, it's going to hurt us, or those chemicals could be embedded inside of those plants. You think of tomatoes, you think of potatoes, you think of squash, you think of soybeans, corn, all this stuff that we constantly use. So before the IPM training, we were having to do a ton of it. Now we don't have to do as much, so we save money on chemicals when it comes to that. Here with our yield, before IPM training, our yield was low. After we put in integrated pest management, after we do crop rotations or we spray with chemicals, we take them out physically, we take them out biologically, however we take them out, our yield goes way up. So IPM training is very, very useful for our farmers throughout the country. The next thing is organic agriculture. This organic agriculture is the production of crops without the use of synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. Almost anything you see, like we see, we look at these things and says it's organically grown, or it's an organic type food. A lot of times when you see that stuff in the grocery store, don't waste your money on it. Because at the end of the day, it's still going in the ground, it's still being planted just like anything else. The only thing they're not using there is a fertilizer or a pesticide. Fertilizers and pesticides, we know we use them, and there may be some long-term effects that maybe affect people's health, but at the end of the day, we wouldn't have been using these things for the past 30 or 40 years had it not been for, say for the past 100 years, had it not been for people checking to make sure that it's going to be okay for you to be able to eat these plants. So when you go to the grocery store, a lot of times when you see something that says it's organically grown, they're making a whole lot of money off of you because they're just putting the plant in the ground. Now they're not using pesticides or fertilizers, so their cost goes down, but your cost goes up. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think if you're just eating vegetables and you're eating your fruits, you're going to be eating healthy. The next thing is the benefits of genetic engineering. All right, I'll talk about genetic engineering. Genetic engineering at times can be a controversial type topic. It is a topic in environmental science. It is a topic in politics. It is a topic all throughout the world where some people go along with it and some people don't. But I promise you, think about genetically modified organisms. You're eating a genetically modified organism all the time. All right, all our fruits have been crossed. They've been all this other things. Think about those little tangelos, the little cuties that you see, a tangerine and an orange, and they're very, very small. They're very good. They can produce lots of them. They can make a big yield, and people can eat them. There's nothing wrong with it. You do see people that try to talk about the crossbreeding, and they don't. And that's really the bigger issue. Is we don't really, sometimes people say we don't know what's happening when we're doing the crossbreeding, how it's going to affect us humans and our health. But with genetic engineering, we get greater yields, we get greater food quality, we get reductions in pesticide use, we get reduction in world hunger, and we get increased profits. So let's do it. It's one of those things where it's hard to say, hey, we don't need to be doing this, when in reality, it does nothing but help. It does nothing but help our farmers. It does nothing but help our economy. Concerns about genetically modified organisms, safety for human consumption, effects on biodiversity, regulation of genetically modified organisms. So sometimes there may be somebody out there that, crosses one plant with another plant and those can't be crossed. Well, those people are going to get in trouble. So at the end of the day, there's really nothing wrong with genetically modified organisms, but we just have to make sure that they're safe for human use, and it has to get regulated. So when you do eat genetically modified organisms, make sure it's approved by the FDA. It's approved by the FDA, Federal Food and Drug Administration. You're good. Eat it, and it's going to be fine. That's it right there for today. The video, like I said, I do have an assignment that goes along with genetically modified organisms for you guys. We'll have again until Sunday to get that turned in. If you have a question this week, it'll be on the Zoom meeting. The Zoom meeting for you guys will be from 9:20 to 10:05 this week, and you will be on there with physical science if any of those kids come on and have any questions. Last week I didn't have a lot of people show up to the meetings, so that's why I'm combining those just to see if there's anybody that has to come on there and ask any questions. The meeting will begin at 9:20. If at 9:40, there's nobody else on there, I'll give it a couple minutes and I'm turning the meeting off. So be on there at 9:20 if you have any questions, just so we're not wasting time. So, like I said, if you have any questions, you can email me or you can ask me in the Zoom meeting. Hope you all staying healthy. If you need anything, just remember, call me, get in touch with me. If we get you in touch with the right people, we'll figure something out for you. But until then, see you guys later, and Hope to see you soon.